So, did the Spurs' loss to the Bulls show that this team is not ready yet?
You are Locked On Spurs, your daily San Antonio Spurs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. We're doing the Locked On NBA Network. I'm your host, Jeff Garcia, Spurs writer for Ken's 5 San Antonio. Glad to have y'all back. And happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Hope y'all can get over this hump. Stretch run of the work week, and that weekend is right around the corner. First weekend of the new year, so hopefully y'all enjoy it. And once again, you can subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Kiss by Plus app, YouTube. You know where to go. Subscribe right now. And also subscribe to the Locked On Spurs newsletter. Nice little free companion piece to this show. Go subscribe to it right now. The link is in the description below on the YouTube side of things. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So what are we talking about today? Yeah, we're going to have to open up an old wound, right? It's not too sealed up yet. Still a little fresh. But the Spurs lost to the Bulls in dramatic but bad fashion. Like the Spurs just on the wrong end of things. Blowing a double-figure lead. Showing no... I'm not going to say. Just showing no, well, a pair of, to get the job done. They just blew it. So the question is, did that loss just show / prove that this team is just not ready yet? They're not there yet, despite their technically improved record from last season. And then we'll talk about tonight's game, Spurs Bucks. Spurs, a little road game trip is still underway. They're in Milwaukee. What will it take for the Spurs to get that bad taste out of their mouth from losing to Chicago and getting a win in Milwaukee? But yeah, a lot of the Spurs after the loss to the Bulls were saying it without saying it. Maybe they're kind of saying this team is just soft. Chris Paul didn't say the S word, but he danced around it. Wemby said it too. Even Mitch Johnson. We're going to play Mitch Johnson, what he had to say after the game in just a few minutes. But yeah, this team, as much as they're winning, maybe the bar is set low. Maybe they're just high expectations. But that loss for Chicago just might have proved that there's still a ways yet to just developing, becoming that formidable team. Maybe they're a little further away from that end line than they are. All right, let's bring in our guest. He is Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Mr. Campos, welcome back to Locked On Spurs. By the way, are you channeling your inner Barry White? Sound pretty deep, there, buddy.
Well, the great thing about the cold weather in San Antonio is everybody gets sick. So I'm coming off of the flu game like MJ did, and I'm kind of down from that. So I'm recovering very well here.
All right. Yeah, at least I hope you don't happen. What happens to you? What happened to me doesn't happen to you, I should say, because I literally got sick. All right. And then it was as if that cold virus took a few days off, and I really thought I was in the clear. I remember waking up. I was like, oh, I guess I'm fine now. After 2-3 days of misery, I was bad. Sneezing and raw eyes and sore throat. So 2-3 days, I felt great, Rudy. Just felt great. It's at the gym, throwing up the weight, everything. And then literally, I'm at the drive-through, picking up some food just days later, and I'm sitting in my car, and you can just feel everything come back. We do appreciate the sound, the nice, soothing sounds of the Barry White voice, though. We appreciate it here.
I heard the deep voice guy, like in Boys to Men, and all those boys groups are the ones that lady. So yeah, hopefully I can keep this voice a little while longer.
Your wife must be listening in right now, saying, "You might want to hurry up. It's going to be a snuggling time soon with that voice."
At least she's getting the message now.
All right. Well, why is Rudy here? Well, first of all, make sure to follow him on X at Sweep the League and do that right now. He'll brag about his show and possibly tease something coming up. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. Well, how much Rudy will reveal later on this show, what's going on in his neck of the woods. All right, so we're going to have to open up an old wound. It's not too old, still kind of fresh. It's that loss in Chicago. The Spurs had a double-figure lead, Rudy. They were just thrashing Chicago left and right, just slapping them up and down for 3 3/4 of a game. And then the wheels completely fell off. They shot a little over 20% in that fourth period. Chicago ran out to I think it was like a 17-7 run to start that quarter. Everything just broke apart. The team looked dejected afterwards. Chris Paul Wembanyama, Mitch Johnson, they all said it without saying it, that this team lacks a little bit of killer instinct, maybe, that good stuff. But my question after that game was, did that game just prove this team is just not there yet? They're not ready yet. And I was cautious to bring it up, Rudy, because we don't want to use the young card. Chris Paul use that young card. Maybe it's not an age thing. Maybe it's just a development thing. Maybe it's just a chemistry thing. I don't know what it is. Let's hear from Mitch Johnson. This is what Mitch Johnson had to say after that debacle in Chicago. You'll hear it. Read between the lines, everybody. You can hear what Mitch is saying, that this team just doesn't have that killer instinct.
Attention to detail and respect for some of the little things that went into what we got the lead, wavered, and then we had a fight on our hands. And so you have to fight the human nature of being complacent or happy with yourselves when things are going well in the middle of a game. And you felt the game flip. It flipped. And I think that lack of respect at times for some of the details played a part. Yes, in the sense, just turnovers. There's a point in the game where you have to take as much indecision or chance out of it. You have to impose your will on the game as an individual and as a team. And that's how teams close wins out in this league. Teams are good. And when you give teams life, and they played well, they made plays, but when we stopped with some of the resistance on defense or some of the fundamentally sound plays on offense, you've let chance creep in more. And I think that's what's frustrating about the last two games, excuse me. No, in the sense that our last, 100 some odd minutes we played really good basketball. We are playing good basketball. But that is something that we have to get better at. It's a big area that we have to improve. You have to win close games in this league. And there are things, but we should have done when it wasn't close to sustain and maintain. So it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
There you have it. That was Mitch Johnson postgame versus Chicago. And Rudy, you heard it. He's saying it without saying it. This team just, at least at the Chicago game, didn't have enough to close it out. To me, that speaks volumes to just simply killer instinct. You got to have that killer instinct. Versus Chicago, you're up that many double figure leagues. You're just destroying them.
Yeah.
And you don't finish the job. Rudy, is that loss just summing up that this team is just not there yet?
It's easy to say that the team's not there yet, and you're not going to throw around the young card anymore. I mean, you technically only have one rookie on the team, but then you've got nothing but veterans, and you can maybe call Victor still relatively young, but Victor's putting up MVP numbers, so you can't ever doubt that what he's doing for the Spurs. Mitch Johnson basically calling out the team, and honestly, Jeff, listening to his comments, and if you really stop, grab your coffee, take a drink, and really listen, he even has doubts, I think, in himself as some of the coaching that he's been doing, especially in the Chicago game. So it's not the adjustments that the Spurs have to make and having the killer instinct on the court that they are lacking. It's also on the coaching side. He's got to make some type of adjustments when the game starts to get out of hand a little bit. If you're losing a lead, it's that one timeout. It's that one substitution. You got to see what's working, what's not working. But overall, the Spurs-wise, look, you've got a culture. And again, I don't want Spurs Twitter to come after you or I on this, but we're just being brutally honest. When you have a culture lately of losing basketball, you don't know how to win. And that's something that you have to learn. You have to get adjusted to winning. Don't take for granted the fact, don't look at the fact that they are 18-18 right now going into the Milwaukee game. That's still 500. That's way better than what we saw last year. 4 games away from tying last year's record with a bunch of games left. So they're still positive. It's just a loss. But in these losses, you don't have that instinct to close out games. And that has been the trend for years already.
Yeah. Yeah. And another trend this season, at least, or maybe I should say of late, because it wasn't a trend to start the season.
Yeah.
When the Spurs were up, and especially at home, they were undefeated. They would handle business. I think they had a well above 500 record of closing out games. Now you're starting to see that slip. The Chicago game, maybe the Denver overtime loss. So, I don't know. A team. And look, you can't compare this team to OKC. OKC is just light years ahead of them right now. But that's a team that will devastate you. That team would demolish you. Now, that could be just a factor of makeup of the roster. They have their Shea, Spurs have their Wemby, but then you look at Shea and he's like, well, look at all the cast he has. And they're pretty solid players. The Spurs, they have good players, but they're not there yet. And I think that loss to Chicago just to me summed up that I need to pump the brakes a bit. That I need to be like, you know what? Okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be surprised that they blew a double-figure lead on the road. The road has been one of their Achilles' heel. That's another reason I think maybe this team is just not there yet. They've gotten better. 22-win season. They're creeping on 22 wins already early in this season. So yes, that's progress by definition. But if you're expecting like a massive leap forward in development and handling business on the court, maybe they're just not there yet. You know what? Let's take a break. When we get back, let's see what Chris Paul had to say. Chris Paul was a little bit more direct about this Spurs team after the loss to Chicago. He is Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Make sure to follow him on X at Sweep the League right now. Let him know that you appreciate his very white tone. He's keeping everybody nice and calm right now. But first, let's talk about the Ultimate GM. I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that I'm really excited about, Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes. In Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. And when it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive play and set your strategy. The way you play won't just affect your current season, it'll shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Here's a special offer for Locked On NBA listeners. Use promo code LOCKEDONCBB, that's all in caps, inside the game store to get a free boost for your program. It's a perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download Ultimate College Basketball HC, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today.
As the new leader of the Decepticons, I command you to subscribe to Locked On Spurs with Jeff Garcia.
And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Rudy Campos of Sweep the League and backup voice to Barry White. Make sure to follow him on X at Sweep the League. And by the way, Starscream just took us out of the break right now. He needs to chill on this whole, leader of the Decepticons. Just take a time out there. Take a time out there, Scream.
I would say Soundwave would be second in command. And it's Megatron, then Soundwave. But Starscream, every group has one that won't do in charge, man. And they just will get there. So Starscream is that guy.
Is Gio that guy for you on Sweep the League?
Actually, I would say no. Gio definitely be like the Soundwave of the guy. And
okay,
is pretty much Shockwave. So we don't have a Starscream.
All right. We're talking about the Spurs and the loss to Chicago just a couple of days ago and whether or not that game just pretty much summed up that this team is not there yet. Now, we said before the break that Chris Paul had some direct words about the team. Let's go ahead and put that on the screen right now so everybody can watch and see it, I should say. And Rudy, you got a sneak peek of it already. Here it is. Here's what it say, quote, "We got to figure out where we get that grit from, where we get that impose our will. We got a group of very good guys, but in order to win these games, it's just a different mentality." Interesting. A switch that we got to find. That's what Chris Paul had to say on the loss to Chicago there. So I'm going to leave it up there for a few more seconds there, Rudy, so you can just kind of sum it up in your head there. He's saying it without saying it, right? That this team, they don't have a grit, killer instinct, soft. Are we going to go there?
I would say soft is a very nice way of putting it, but it goes to what, we mentioned a little while ago. The culture in San Antonio before Chris Paul was losing. I mean, let's not be real. After the big three, it was pretty much losing. You had some winning seasons with, DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge. You had some good times, but lately with these guys that are there, it's a losing culture. So you've got to get in the mindset, the mentality of what Chris Paul's talking about. Think like winners. You're going to be winners. You mentioned OKC. I mean, those guys are young, but they've got a winning mentality. They've got a culture where, you know what, we're going to go out there, leave it on the court, and we're going to win by any means necessary. I think that's what Chris is talking about. It's got to be a different mentality. You got to go in there being confident. I think I see in a lot of these games that they lack confidence. They kind of go to Devin. They kind of rely on Jeremy at times, stuff like that. It's the confidence that these guys got to exude, man, and you don't see it a lot. You can't rely on Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes to be that gut person to get you to the finish line. Eventually, these guys are not going to be on the Spurs roster. Right. You've got to rely on the younger guys to do it. So, yeah, the mentality's got to change.
All right, let me ask you, should we just stop and just be like, you know what, this is just one of those games? It's just one of those games. Every team goes through it. From OKC to Dallas to Denver. I mean, look at Denver, the mighty Denver Nuggets, and the record doesn't really reflect that. Are we making a bigger issue out of that loss to the Bulls than we should be? Should we just say, it's just one of those games? For me, I know a lot of Spurs fans will say that, but for me, I can't let it go because if we're looking at development and we're looking at a rebuild and we're looking at a team for the long term, or even the kind of middle short term, to just break out of this play-in slump, playoff drought. And I need to see something that you're going in the right direction. And to me, that loss to the Bulls felt like they took steps backwards. Your thoughts?
Step backwards, no. I think if you were thinking about taking a step backwards, then you would see this happen more often than not. I know we've seen the leads being lost with Denver.
I mean, that's starting a pattern, though. I mean, they're starting to trend that way.
Yeah, but could you be more fair about it and say, okay, if I see it for the next 4 or 5 games, then that's more of a pattern? Because just like stocks, man, stocks go up and down, and they can go up one day, down the next, back up the next day, kind of go up and down. Right now, you still, it goes back to the other thing. There's no identity. I mean, the only identity is Victor Wembanyama on the team. There's nobody else. You're going to have Chris Paul bounce back, have a good game, similar like he did against Chicago, but yet you see Harrison Barnes kind of struggle. So you've got to get everybody on the same ship. I don't think personally the Chicago Bulls loss is that much of a huge factor for me. I think it's one of those, hey, it happens. There's a reason why we've never seen an undefeated team in the NBA, because it's dang near impossible to be perfect every single night. This is one of those games. I mean, you look at the bright side, Victor, close to a triple-double on the block side with 8 blocks. I mean, there's all
on the flip, though, we only had 1 point in the fourth quarter.
The mentality, Jeff. It's the mentality. You got to have more of a killer instinct. And, also, I'm not sweeping this under the rug.
Rudy, it sounds like you're saying it without saying it. You don't want to go there. I mean, it sounds like you want to say this team is soft. It sounds that.
No, I mean, I'm gladly going to say the mentality of the team is not. It's not winning basketball. I said at the beginning, there's not a winning culture, and that's something to ask a whole lot of for Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes to come in and, hey, make us a winning team. Well,
yeah,
they're winning. I mean, they're 18-18, so you can't say they're not winning. But at the same time, I mean, you got to give credit. To me, honestly, you give some talk of the Spurs, but look at the Bulls side. You got to give credit to them because they figured out a game plan that worked in the fourth to get it done. And part of sports is if you lose the lead, you got to figure out why you're losing the lead. If you can't figure it out, you're going to lose the game. So it's kind of hand in hand, but I wouldn't put a whole lot in the Bulls loss, to be honest with you.
All right. Well, if numbers don't lie, Rudy, then let's look what the numbers have to say in the last 3 games.
Numbers, man.
I know you numbers, bud. We gotta appease that crowd of Locked On Spurs that like numbers. Right? Let me sit up in here because I'm slumping. All right. So in their last 3 games, Rudy, they're 1-2.
Okay.
All right. They have a minus 4.2 net rating. Their offensive rating has plummeted in the last 3 games to 107.7, good for 25th in the league. Their defensive rating, it's still okay. It's good, but it's taken a little slip. The 14th at 112. It gets even better. Yeah, you look at their turnover percentage, 15th in the league at 14.2. You're looking at their steal percentage dropped to 28th at 4.9%. So you're seeing a little bit of slippage. Now, okay, like I know you don't like numbers, and look, let's just, if numbers don't lie, okay, that's what the numbers say. But then on the other hand, if you're going to add context, it is just a 3-game sample size. That loss was against a Denver team in overtime where it was back-to-back, and look at the Spurs just got gassed, and that happens to all teams. But circling back to the Chicago game, what I want to see this team do is just, look, it happens, all right? You're fine. It happens in sports, okay? But how they rebound from this, how they take these lessons moving forward, because there's a lot of lessons. It's the turnovers, it's poor shooting, it's not showing up in crunch time, it's taking the foot off the gas pedal. It feels like that team that you may have got a little taste of some early success early in the game, and really were feeding themselves, popping their collars up. You're like, what you got, Bulls? What you got? And we got punched in the mouth. Do you think that was a case of that, just them just feeling themselves?
Yeah, you and I love my memory kind of serves as a curse a lot of times, but you and I did a Locked On Spurs where it was asking the question of have they peaked too soon?
Oh,
and yeah, I remember telling you they did. They peaked real soon. I wasn't gonna judge their season right away. I figured I'd give them till the All-Star break to see how they're going. So far, it's so good. But the peak part, yeah, you got a taste of winning early in the season. And what's weird about the NBA is you peak in the season. It's not how you started, but it's how you finish. And a lot of teams are going to be able to adjust. So these teams are going to be able to say, okay, well, if Victor is going to get his, let him get his. We're going to shut everybody down around him. We're going to shut down Devin Vassell, who's, in my opinion, been struggling since entering the starting 5, just throwing that out there. You see Jeremy kind of up and down. But you still see guys like Julian Champagny still have an impact, even off the bench. So, I mean, it goes kind of back to, are they peaking? I think they peaked at the right time with the right lineup, if that makes any sense. I mean, goes back to the chatter that you and I have had. This lineup works the best. This lineup is awesome. Well, I would always go back to, well, if it was working, why are you going to change it? That, you don't fix anything, bro. Again, it goes back to the fact of, well, he's a lottery pick or he's our highest paid player, so he has to be a starter. I don't get that part of the basketball analytics, but that's the reason why we're behind a mic and not behind a bench. So that's kind of the way I look at it.
Or they're playing Devin because something might be happening in the horizon. I'm just saying.
I will not confirm nor deny. So
just easing the Locked On Spurs fan base. Again, the loss to Chicago, I think it still stings with Spurs fans. I as of this point in their season, this one was probably, it's up there as far as the most heartbreaking ones, because my God, they were just doing it all against Chicago. The defense, the offense, the ball was flowing. It wasn't just Victor. It was, Devin early on, contributing. CP3. And by the way, credit CP3. Is he having a renaissance in San Antonio? Seriously.
Everywhere he goes.
God. See how clutch he was to close out that game? I don't think any fault goes on him to the Chicago game. He was just battling to the bitter end. Battling. I mean, you even saw with 4 seconds left, Chicago hit a clutch shot. That was it. You still saw him barking at the refs, trying to figure a way to put the Spurs in position. So I hope he lit into that team afterwards, as did Mitch, because we can't use the young thing. All right, fine. Then treat them like guys and treat them like men and then lay into them. And I hope they did. But We want to hear from you. Are we making this bigger than what it is? This is just one game. It's a whatever. Or do you really think that loss to the Bulls just showed that this team just not there yet? They're lacking something, and maybe it could be that killer instinct. You can let Rudy know on X at Sweep the League. You can let me know by simply following the Locked On Spurs YouTube page and subscribing to the Locked On Spurs newsletter right now. If you're on YouTube, it's on the description below. All right, coming up next, we're going to be looking at tonight's game, Spurs-Bucks. Hopefully the Spurs can get a W on this road trip. But first, let's talk about game time. And when I talk to you about Game Time, go to gametime.co right now. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets easier for your favorite live events that much better. Game Time filters out the fluff, so you only get incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. Hey, Game Time has it all. They have the super deal. They got seats view before you buy. They got curated deals to make it easier to find the best price on great seats, the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection. You will be pleasantly surprised with this app. Go get it right now. Game Time Picks, again, that's a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater. Hey, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time.
A Jedi uses the Force. To subscribe to Locked On Spurs, pass on what you have learned.
And we're back right here on Locked On Spurs with Barry White himself. Oh, that's not Barry White. That's Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Make sure to follow him on X at Sweep the League. And by the way, I hope you're feeling better, Rudy.
I am. I'm feeling better. I just wish I had this voice forever. I just think it would make my podcast or my show go a lot better.
You know, I host a lot of Comic Cons in San Antonio, voice acting. With that voice acting.
Yeah, see, that's something I can get into. So I'm gonna have to get sick like 365 days a year. I can have this consistent.
No, don't do that. That's a bad idea. All right, we're gonna start previewing tonight's game, Spurs and Bucks. Spurs are on their second game of their 4-game road trip. Just getting easier. Going to be tonight against Giannis and those Bucks. The Bucks are 18-16, so record-wise, not too far off from the Spurs at 18-18. The Bucks are at 5th spot in the Eastern Conference. Looking at some of the numbers, the Bucks are 10th in defensive rating at 112, and offensive rating at 15th at 113.4. Looking over the last 5 games, they're 2-3, so they're struggling a little bit as well. And I think it just begins and ends with Giannis, doesn't it, Rudy?
Pretty much, yeah. It's going to begin and end with Giannis. If I'm not mistaken, the Bucks kind of have Giannis and Middleton as game time decisions going into the game. So we'll see if they play, which I believe at least Giannis will play this game. But it does start and end with him. I think what you're going to have to really, really do is it's basically containing Damian Lillard is what it is I think Giannis would get him.
And historically, he cooks the Spurs.
Yeah, that's the problem, is that he historically cooks the Spurs, and if you're going to put Chris Paul on him, great, but I mean, again, it's really hard to stop Dame Lillard when he gets going, so he's going to be my X factor when it comes to the game. Contain Damian Lillard, and you have a really good shot of beating the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah. Looking at the Spurs tonight, or Spurs-Bucks game. So last season, the Bucks won the regular season 2-0 over San Antonio. Currently, the Bucks have won 3 straight games over San Antonio. So are the Spurs the Bucks slump busters? Are we going to go there?
Maybe. I mean, I would say it's in Milwaukee, or they can say I definitely think that if I'm a betting man, I'm not betting the house. I'm probably betting a couple of bucks that the Bucks will win this game over the Spurs. But again, it's the NBA, man. It's hard to even know who's great anymore outside of a couple of teams.
Yeah. Now, for me, for the San Antonio side of things, and it goes back to the Chicago game. I can't let it go. I was watching the game and I was just slamming my hand on that couch, like, what are you guys doing? But I would love to see Mitch go back to the OG lineup at the start of the season. But barring that, if he'll still be trying out the one recently, then I put aside the numbers, put aside the streaks and stats and this and X and Y, and I want to see him come out and be pissed off. I gotta see that. I want to see a killer instinct in them. I gotta see it in them because the way they lost in that fashion in Chicago. If I'm a player, I'm coming into tonight's game versus the Bucks, and I'm like, no, I ain't gonna let that happen again. No way. So I want to see them have a killer instinct tonight. I want to see them be just so ticked off from how they lost to Chicago and just take it out on the Bucks. So I want to see that. I also want to see no more 1 point quarters from Wemby. I was shocked when I saw that. I went out to the full box score. I was like, I had to do a double. I really thought it was just a typo. I said, "There's no way. There's no way." I mean, let me look at that again. Let me go double check on it at NBA.com. Maybe I just read it wrong. No, 1 point. I never thought I would say that out of Wemby. Your thoughts?
Yeah, 1 point for Wemby is something that you definitely ever expect from it. And you're right, doing a double take on it because you're like 1 point. You forgot the zero somewhere or the 4 right one. It makes no sense. But yeah, you can't have anything like that. Now, was that the reason they lost Chicago? No, there's a whole bunch of other reasons why they lost. But yeah, definitely can't have that from Wemby again.
Yeah. Giannis, he's just having another MVP season. He's averaging 31.6 points per. That's his average, Rudy. Yeah. 31.6 points per game, 11.6 rebounds, 6 assists in 35 minutes. He's shooting 60% from the field. So, yikes. As far as Damian Lillard, is not doing it too easy. 24.7 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, 7.4 assists in 36 minutes. Say what you will about Giannis and Wemby, which will be a great matchup tonight, but I want to see, how the Spurs deal with Damian Lillard, Castle attacking him. Will they put Jeremy Sohan on him? I think you're right. I think Giannis is going to be Giannis, just like Wemby is going to be Wemby. But the key difference is the Bucks have that complementary player with Damian. Spurs, is it Vassell? Is it Castle? Is it Sohan? You don't know. So you could see the Bucks say, all right, Wemby and Giannis, y'all do your thing, but we'll worry about everybody else. You think that could be an approach that Bucks will take?
I think so. And, I think it's going to be more of, like I said, let Wemby do his thing. We'll try to contain everybody else. Having Dame go off is probably going to happen. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, but more than likely it will. The thing with Milwaukee, too, is don't forget their second unit. They've got Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, Bobby Portis. I mean, those guys are legit guys off the bench that can cause a whole lot of havoc. So it's going to be a tough outing for Wemby with Giannis and Brook Lopez. I mean, those are two very good defenders. So it's going to be a tough outing for Victor. But again, I still think he probably has the better game out of any Spur out there. One guy to look at, I think, in this game is Stephon Castle, Jeff. Just because the guard play with Dame Lillard, with Middleton being, day-to-day game time decision, I think Steph Castle could have a really good game for the Spurs. Just kind of coming off screens, getting to the basket, making cuts to the basket. So look for him. I kind of highlight him on my Spurs side as, being an impact player for this game, for the Bucks and Spurs game.
Yeah, exactly. I think Portis dropped 20 points recently for Milwaukee. So I think I got my notes here. Yeah, he scored Portis, that is 20 plus points in 6 games already this season for the Bucks. And he scored 10 or more points in 10 of the last 12 games from Milwaukee. So keep an eye on that. So Spurs definitely got themselves a handful despite the Bucks coming in with a subpar record. By the way, can you believe this? How, I want to say, I don't know, bad, but how the West, there's really just maybe 2 clear-cut winners, Houston and OKC, and that's a stretch with Houston. Yeah. It's just really, it feels like OKC and everybody else is all mixed in together. Look at the Denver record, look at Dallas's record, and you look at the Spurs, they're like, oh, they're sitting at the 8th spot, 7th spot. I'm a little surprised by that.
Yeah, as of the recording I just checked, 'cause I was curious about it. They're sitting at the 10th spot right now, pretty much a half game ahead of Sacramento, who's on a tear, 5-game winning streak. I mean, ever since they fired Mike Brown, they've been ridiculously good. But you're right. I mean, you're going all the way from 3 down to what, 11, even 12 with Phoenix at 16 and 18. It's 24 game wins for Memphis. 6 games is not a lot in the Western Conference. So yeah, it's Oklahoma City, it's the Rockets, but to be honest, it's literally Oklahoma City, the rest of the pack. I mean, we took Oklahoma City to win the title this year on Sweep the League. So it goes to show how good that team is. And the scary part, Jeff, is they're doing it without Chet. Imagine getting Chet back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can kind of just put a bow on that if they're free of injuries the rest of the year. But yeah, I totally get that on the Western side.
And I'm surprised nobody's talking about Cleveland. And seriously,
Well,
Cleveland,
they're a contender. They
hell of a season. And they're getting lost in the shuffle.
Well, they're a contender, and be on the watch. I mean, this is a Spurs podcast, I get, but be on the lookout because Cleveland could be in play for Jimmy Butler, and if that happens, you're going to kind of give away the Eastern Conference there because the return that Miami would get would not affect Cleveland at all. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that.
All right, well, there you have it. Quick Spurs Bucks preview, a little bit of NBA talk right here on Locked On Spurs. Rudy, what's going on with Sweep? I know you got something cooking. I'm not going to pressure you into telling everybody what it is, but maybe you can, tell us what to look out for. How's that?
Yeah, I mean, so when we've been saying 2024 was about positioning and 2025 is the dominating part for Sweep the League. So we've launched a whole lot of network stuff, Sweep Unplugged, Sweep TV, STL Music. Now we started going into our NFL coverage, draft coverage. We got some NBA prospect coverage coming up. That's going to be coming out weekly. So the way to get it is go to YouTube, search Sweep the League TV. That way you can also be up to date because the possibilities now, just throwing it out there for everybody, but there could be a possibility that you can catch Sweep the League reports on radio Monday through Friday, 3 times a day. Plus, we'll also maybe have a radio thing going too as well. So not only that, Jeff, we kind of got approved for some streaming TV network. So there's just a whole lot of stuff for Sweep the League. This is probably the podcast you want to join as well as Locked On Spurs. So just be attention to everything. We're letting everything go this year.
So what are you going on tour with the Barry White, band there? When are you going?
I've been texting the guys from Boys to Men, and we're trying to get a date. We're going to start off in San Antonio at the Frostbank, so we'll get it right away
At the Sunken Gardens.
Jeez, man. Wouldn't Sunken Gardens be more rock? I mean, that's what Sunken Gardens are like rock music. So
what was it? The Margarita Pour-Off?
Yeah, I think they still have that actually.
Yeah,
I think they still have that.
Yeah, it's like a rock venue, Margarita Pour-Off, and then like the Fiesta Week they have like a jazz festival there or something like that.
Yeah.
By the way, really, and not to forget too,
Yeah.
highlighted in Cloak and Dagger. So
Oh,
the 80s lady. Yeah. There you go. All right. Again, he is Rudy Campos of Sweep the League. Follow him on X at Sweep the League. Do that right now. Rudy, we thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here on Locked On Spurs. And for y'all, we appreciate y'all subscribing to Locked On Spurs. And if you're not, do it right now on the YouTube side of things. Newsletter. Yes, newsletter. Down in the description below on YouTube. Subscribe to it right now. Locked On Spurs newsletter. Links right there. Click on that. Completely free. It'll be a nice little piece hitting your email inbox every single day. Do that right now. And we'll be back tomorrow talking all things silver and black. Hopefully the Spurs get a W tonight versus Milwaukee. I believe Raul Dominguez is joining us. So we'll see what Raul and I have to say about the Spurs game against Milwaukee. And maybe we're talking about a W instead of an L. All right, that's coming up tomorrow on Locked On Spurs. But for Rudy Campos, I am Jeff Garcia. We're going to put a lock in this episode of Locked On Spurs.